Great to have you here
Welcome to the podcast.
with me and my guests from around the world. Welcome to the Simone Feiler Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast.
Let's get into it, shall we? On the Simone Feiler Podcast. David Bayley's just stepped out of the booth after spending quite a few hours reading his beautiful debut audiobook, The Home Within. To me, how lucky am I? I really am. David is a self-confessed hippie. He penned his journey to self-discovery, literally finding himself through finding amazing places and friends on the road as he travelled our beautiful country in his van. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Simone.
Such a wonderful experience hearing your beautiful story.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to read.
How are you feeling after being in there for a few days?
Well, the first day was quite a shock. I hadn't spoken for 4 hours straight for a long time. And I got home, my throat was sore, I was exhausted, I went straight to the couch and fell asleep. But the second few days, we've been going for what? 4 days? 5 days.
5 days today.
Today and yesterday, the last 2 days, I've been feeling really energized and I haven't been sore, I haven't been tired. It's as though my voice has caught up. So really, really happy. And just reading the last few lines of that book, wrapping it up, just goosebumps all round.
Definitely.
Beautiful.
I totally agree with that. It was like you were born to do this by today, wasn't it?
By today. born to and required.
All right, so your awakening, I'm not going to give too much away about your book, but we'll talk a little bit about, you and what came to be with your book. Your awakening started in 2012, basically the year the Mayan calendar ended. So give us a bit of background how this kind of all came about.
Yeah, so that was, I think my early to mid 30s was around that year. And the decades before then were surrounded in confusion and darkness and pain and suffering, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I got into alcohol and drugs in a big way, and although some of these drugs actually helped me to open my heart or open my eyes a little bit, it became dependent. I was trying to get away from my suffering through distraction, through drugs and alcohol. In 2011, whilst drunk, I jumped off a fence and fell onto hard railway rocks and severely fractured my left ankle. I went to hospital and got out with a cast on my foot, my whole leg. And
Not just a half job.
Not just a half job. And then proceeded to spend the next 10 months lying on the couch, not really moving or really wanting to move. It just hurts too much to actually try and walk. Anyway, early on with that fracture, I was telling a friend in Melbourne about it, and he said, fractured left ankle, eh? Well, in some circles, they say that is an indication that you really need to take a good look at where your life is heading. A bit of a spark happened after he said that, so I hung up and then just kind of thought about it, looked at my life and like, what am I doing? What am I doing? This cannot end well. If I continue on my current course, this will not end well. So I thought some more, and I suppose that I just made a decision internally. I wasn't really aware of that decision.
What were you doing prior to this? Were you working or?
I was working casually, so probably a couple of days a week, not very much, mainly just kind of living off Centrelink.
Right.
Very unproductive, very distracted, didn't know who I was, didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd left one big career and got into another completely different career and was kind of doing that, but then I kind of got tired and decided that I wanted to do nothing for a while. Anyway, after the 9th or 10 months, things happened. I was able to walk again. And just at the same time I was able to walk, I received a good contract to do some work, quite lucrative. So I went to Canberra and did some work on this IT project. And during this course, a friend who, more of an acquaintance that I'd seen at parties that I didn't really speak to that much, I didn't really know much about, he sent me this invitation to go and see a film screening. And the film screening was a documentary about ayahuasca by a local Australian journalist. And so I went to see this film screening, and it was as if this 1,000,000-watt light globe switched on inside my body. And I walked out of that film screening with so much passion in my being.
Wow.
I was like, wow, how do I do this? How do I go and find these ceremonies? And like, the basis for the documentary was in Peru.
Right.
And so I was thinking, I can't afford to go to Peru. I've got no money. I don't know what
I'm
to
on the
do.
dole. I've just recovered from my broken ankle.
Yeah. And so I was looking at people's experiences of ayahuasca and plant medicines on YouTube and the internet. And
It's supposed to find you, ayahuasca.
yeah, well, I sent this guy, this acquaintance that invited me to the film screening, I sent him an email and I said, hey, I've been looking around and I really don't know where to go. Like, are there any local ones happening? Are there any in Australia even? And he didn't reply for ages, and I kept on with my passion. I kept on looking and I kept on asking, and I started to pester him a little bit. I started sending an email every so often, and after I think 3 or 4 emails, I got a reply saying, I might know of something. I'll keep you posted. Something like that. And so a week later, I got an email from him with the instructions and guidelines of this particular ceremony that was in Adelaide where I was living. And so I was like, wow, this is perfect.
Very close to home.
Very close to home.
So you were in Canberra at the time, or?
I was in Adelaide, so I went to Canberra to work, and then I came back to Adelaide.
Right,
so
okay.
my work flew me back.
Right.
So I went to these ceremonies, and it was a 2-night ceremony, and it just opened my eyes. It said, or what I really felt like was that I knew that I needed to do that work on myself, particularly since breaking the ankle. But I didn't know how. Like, I know I want to change. I know I want to grow and be a better person and be more present and be more loving to myself and the world around me.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. I know what feels good. I know what doesn't feel good, and that's what I've been doing. So the ayahuasca ceremony gave me the tools that I needed to work on myself. And so after that first weekend, I just, wow, I've got all these tools and I can actually do this for myself, with myself. So that was the beginning of this absolute 2-year transformation. And
that is an awakening.
yeah.
Man.
And at the end of these 2 years, I had the feeling that it's like, I kind of want to go and travel, get out there and see Australia and not have a house and just be on the road and be free. And
So then you walked into your van? How did that happen?
There was this similar passion, this like 1,000,000-watt light globe kind of thing was playing out in a passion of mine. And so it's like you might attest, by seeing someone attractive on the street, you'll like turn your head and go, wow. Anyway, I was doing that. I was doing that with campervans. I'd be driving or walking along the street and I'd see this van and I would just stop everything I was doing and just stare with my jaw open. Whoa, look at that. I want. And so I kind of paid attention to that. I couldn't not, and started looking around for campervans on internet car sales pages and calling a few dealerships and such, and nothing really came up that I wanted. I wanted something diesel. I wanted something that could go long distances and that could be lived in. And so I started telling my friends about this passion. It's like, hey guys, I really want to find a camper van. I like just telling you, just letting you know. And
did they think you'd gone mad? Did they think where's David gone?
My friends know me as already quite mad, so they were okay with it. And so one of my friends, Graham, he'd just started work in this used car dealership as a mechanic, and he sent me a link of their online page, and it had this camper van in this brown grey, two-tone, pop-top, long wheelbase Toyota Hiace. And I took one look at the page and just said this, yes, this is the one. This is the one. And so I sent a message to Graham and I said, hey, can I come in and look? He goes, yeah, go and chat to the sales guys in the dealership. So I rocked up. I went to their showroom. It was inside on nice carpeted floors and it was well polished. Everything was clean. All the greys and browns stood out. And I just said another big yes. The sales rep opened the doors and popped the bonnets and popped the top and everything, and I said yes before
She's the one.
Started that. So I said, great, what next? Let's put a deposit down, I suppose. And he's like, yeah, about that. Earlier today, someone else just put a deposit down, so it's not really available anymore. I kind of paused at that, that silent shock that you have from something that is so sure and that you really want that just doesn't happen. And so I silently walked out of the showroom and went home and said, this doesn't feel right, but I guess I've got to accept it. It's not for me. And a week went on and I kept looking unsuccessfully for other vans, and I kept thinking about this one. I kept going back to that same webpage and going, wow, this is the one. But it's not available. So why am I thinking about it? And so a week passed and Graham sent me another message and he says, hey, do you just want to give the dealership a call again? So-and-so is wanting to have a chat to you. So I was like, okay, cool. And I actually came into the showroom and he told me that the person that had originally put the deposit down was being unreasonable. They were expecting huge discounts because of scratches on the side and all this stuff. And so they said, we're just not going to sell to you. And so I went in. I had, I think, $300 or $400 in my bank account, in my savings account. And I put the $250 deposit down. I said, great, let's do it. It's down. It's there. So I walked out of the dealership going, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for this? Like, all right, just let it go. Just let it go. You're following your passion.
Was that the first that you actually thought that just let it go? Was that the first time?
Yeah, pretty much. It was kind of like the passion was like a voice whispering in my ear saying, don't pay attention to the little things, the money, the time, the effort. Don't worry about that. It's all going to be taken care of.
That was the beginning.
That was really the beginning of paying attention to myself. Yeah, so I walked into the bank that day, asked for a loan for $15,000, no savings. They said, oh, no problem, can you provide some work pay slips? I'm like, sure. So I provided some work pay slips for a few months ago, and they accepted it. They were fine with that. And so they gave me the $15,000. I walked out of the bank with the bank check, and the car dealership was only about a 10-minute walk away. So I walked all the way there, holding this cardboard check in my hand as I walked in front of me.
You must have felt like you'd won the lotto.
Slapped it down on the desk and said, here's the payment for the van.
Awesome. You drove away straight away?
I think I waited a day, pretty much drove away straight away.
Right.
And then, that same old thought, the mind's machinations was, how am I going to pay the loan off now? As soon as I got home, I parked the van in the drive. Someone else came along, bought my old van, had a little bit of money for that. All this work arrived, started paying me really well.
Yeah.
I paid this loan off in about 6 weeks.
Wow, in 6 weeks?
6 weeks.
This is what happens when you listen to the universe, which is listening to yourself. As soon as you start doing what you really want to do and not worry about the consequences, it's all taken care of.
The hows don't matter.
And this is what your whole journey is about. So I love listening to your book because you've learned that from, go to woe, that if it's in the hands of someone else and you're worrying constantly, it ain't going to happen and it's all going to be difficult. But as soon as you let go, there's a road there for you, like yours was, right across some amazing places across our fabulous country, I've got to say. You met some beautiful people who definitely helped you with your self-discovery.
So along the journey, I met heaps of people and made heaps of friends. And as I listened to myself with the trusting, I began to listen to others. Like, oh, do they have something for me? If they're just sharing a story about their life, could potentially their story about their life also apply to me? And so I started listening to everybody as if they were my teacher. So I still enjoyed them as friends and relaxed and everything, but in the back of my mind, I was saying, now, Simone just told me this story of herself. What, does it have anything to do with me? And just by doing that, it was not so much about listening to the story, but turning the eye of my vision inside instead of outside. Started really looking at myself. And then all of a sudden, everything was serendipitous. Everything was spontaneous and synchronous, and people would just come along at the exact moment that I needed them to and tell me and teach me this amazing lesson. And it continues with everybody in my life. And I think it will always continue throughout my life, that people will just come along.
Do you meditate?
Yeah, every morning and sometimes every evening. I think it's one of the most important things for my life to be able to start the day with a calm mind and a calm nervous system.
How did you first get involved with meditation? When did that first happen?
Yeah, I had no idea about meditation when I was living in Adelaide. I had heard of it and tried it once, thinking that I could go to other worlds instantly, and just didn't. It was all this imagined pipe dream of monks in monasteries, and it was during my ayahuasca 2 years of doing ayahuasca every few months and learning the benefit of regular training in my mind. On the road specifically, I went to do a Vipassana course, which was something that really kicked my meditation and my self-awareness into gear. Before, I was just meditating, but wasn't as effective as post-Vipassana. And to really see the nature of my own mind and to really see what life is like with a calm mind, with a focused and present mind, is totally different.
Do you think you would have got this far without meditating?
I think that the journey was the journey, and supposition on past events doesn't really make sense, but I would assume or presume that if I hadn't done Vipassana or if I wasn't meditating during the journey, it would have been similar. It just would have been a lot harder. I would have taken longer to learn the lessons that I learned. I would have probably had a harder time because that lack of letting go. Letting go is really common in meditation. You got to let go of those thoughts.
Yeah.
You got to let go of the feelings associated with what's coming into the body.
We talked about that too, about letting go of the outcome of things.
Yeah.
That is very huge, that theme throughout your book.
Letting go of the outcome is akin to being in the moment at all times. And if I'm doing a thing, if I'm speaking on a podcast or writing a book, and the whole time I'm thinking about the finished product, the whole time I'm thinking about the hardcover book, or even what people are going to think about the book or the podcast or anything that I do, if I'm looking for that end gain, as F.M. Alexander put it, the end gain is something that we compulsively do. Whereas if I just do what I'm doing for the purpose of doing what I'm doing in the moment without any desire of outcome, then that thing will not only be beautiful, but I'll be satisfied whilst doing it. I won't be looking for an end.
If you like that, then you need to have a listen or a read. It's going to be out in hard copy and audiobook and ebook, I believe, as well.
Yes, and ebook, yep.
The Home Within. You'll love David's book because it's right on point with what he's just said there. You've settled down now, or a little bit, in Brisbane. How long were you on the road for, and how did you come to be in God's country?
So 2 years in total. of the van travel, roughly 2 years. Near the end of the book, I moved to Mullumbimby. So I stayed in Mullumbimby for a little while. Around that, I started learning Zentai Shiatsu, which is a wonderful massage modality that blends in Thai massage, osteopathy, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and yoga. And so this amazing craft really spoke to me because I'm a high touch. I love touch, and I'm a very kinesthetic person.
Yeah.
So I started doing this course, and it was on the Sunshine Coast. So I slowly gravitated from the Northern Rivers up to Brisbane, and then up to the Sunshine Coast every month, and then I'd finished the course and got into some disability care work and kind of settled a little bit. And I found that Brisbane is really beautiful. And so out of all the capital cities I've lived, I'd say that Brisbane is my favourite. I just love the city in general. It's just so pretty, so green.
It is pretty.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah. It's the sunshine.
It's the sunshine. And so as far as I know, I can see myself staying in Brisbane for a while.
Is that right?
But ultimately, and Simone asked me this earlier, she said, are you going to go travelling again? Are you going to buy another campervan? And I said, I have no idea. I have no idea when that little passion, when that little spark is going to ignite into a flame, and then I'm going to be going into a particular direction. And that gives me a sense of relief. There's this feeling of uncertainty in life. No one really knows what's going to happen. And to embrace uncertainty, as my teacher used to say, the only thing I can be certain of is uncertainty. But if I embrace that uncertainty, I don't know what's going to happen next. I start being in the moment.
Yeah.
I start being okay with whatever is. Going for my passion, going for my heart's calling can be a double-edged sword. And if I relentlessly go toward my passion, causing hurt to another, it's not really the thing. So we've got to find a middle path. Still got to chop the wood and carry the water.
Yeah.
I've still got to work. I've still got to, to work.
But your work is about helping people as well. I mean, you did a bit of that in Mullumbimby. It is in your book with Grace. And you discovered something about yourself. Helping people is one of the things that you love to do. Yeah,
I have a passion for caring. I don't even know how to put it. It's like this energy comes through me when it's time to support another person in their life. And it feels good, it's rewarding. And, I finish the day, even though it might be a hard slog during the day, I finish the day satisfied. I think finding the middle path between following my passion and being responsible and compassionate to the world around me. I can be relentless in finding my passion and following my passion. And if I just do that with blinders on like a horse, then I'm not going to see all the young saplings or trees that I've broken along the way whilst thrashing through the path. I can do both. You can tell he's a writer. That's awesome, just the way you described that. So you decided to put pen to paper when? How did that all come about? Yeah, this was pretty much after I drove away in this camper van. I was thinking, right, now I'm gonna go and live in the world in this van. I'd been writing a few things, like nothing that I've really published, but I thought, I want to make a journal out of this. I want to write about my experiences. And there was something inside of me saying, yeah, do that. And so I thought, how am I going to share it? It's going to be a blog or, no, not a blog. I want something more personal. So I created a mailing list of my friends and family. And when I started traveling, I would spend some time and write out the events that had happened to me and my response to the events, my feelings, my mental processes, and send them out to this mailing list. And as I traveled, I met people and the mailing list grew and grew and grew. And I found that every time I wrote about these things that were happening to me, and every time I pushed that send button, I had this really good feeling. It was my therapy. I spent long periods of time by myself and was able to still have that social contact and that therapy that comes from letting it all go, letting it all out, exposing myself, sharing, being vulnerable.
And then you kept those
Yeah,
emails?
I finished the journals off at the end of the journey, and I thought I really want to put this in a book. And so a year passed, and I did nothing about it. And another year passed, and I started doing something about it, and I started just kind of doing it bit by bit, just like maybe a couple of 100 words each day. And I rewrote it in chronological order from the start of the journal to the end, and eventually had one document. And so at the end of that document, I thought, that was pretty crap. I'm going to rewrite it. So I rewrote it again.
Wow, that's huge.
And then I had another look at it, didn't really do much with it, started doing care work, and wanted to rewrite it again, because I really wanted to get some of these verse-like chapters on point. And I wasn't very motivated. I didn't really want to do it. I just wanted to distract myself and be a bit lazy. And so I had a client that caught wind that I was writing a book. This is a disabled client. And each Friday evening, I would go around to her house and we'd do the chores and wash the dishes, etc., etc. Then we would sit down with a cup of tea, and I would read her each journal entry. One journal entry per night, maybe two. And the process of reading these journal entries to another person gave me the motivation that I needed to continue my writing. So that continued, and I read this, and it was a really beautiful experience with this woman being able to share these stories. She was the first one that had ever heard the book.
I thought I was. She was. Just so we came.
And he's got a mention at the front of the book, and she really helped me. Thank you, Karen. She really helped me to get the book on paper, to get the motivation to write this book.
How awesome.
Yeah.
It's wonderful that your paths crossed then.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very grateful.
When you're on that path,
Yeah.
things are there
Things
for
happen.
you. Things happen for you,
Yeah.
not to you. Okay, so you've now got the book all done and you want to publish it. What were you thinking? How am I going to get this out to the people? How did you approach a publisher? What was the next step for you?
Yeah, so when the book was finished and I was going, okay, what next? I simply did as I usually do, just jumped on Google Maps and typed in publishers.
Yeah.
So a couple came up and I really paid attention to my feelings when I saw their name. And so my publisher came up and was like, yeah, this is pretty good. And said yes. They sent me the fee. I sweated a little bit. Then the process happened. Met a wonderful editor, Jackie Farrow,
Yeah, she's
from Raw
fabulous.
Memoirs, and she just did a really marvelous job. She told me she got me to restructure the book, so it wasn't just in, day one I did this, day two I did that. She got me to structure it properly, and she did a marvelous job editing the whole book, and it just turned into some really, really strong writing. And when I go back through the chapters, I'm like, wow. This is amazing.
Would you recommend, because you've self-published obviously through a publisher, Brisbane publisher, in-house you went through.
In-house publishing.
They're fabulous.
Yeah, they've
Both
done a
of
really
those,
good job.
Yeah, I love both of those people at in-house, Di and Bob and Jackie. I think you're in really good hands there. What would you recommend it to other writers that have, got their manuscript going through self-publishing? Did you think it was an easy process, a rewarding process?
So when I went to a publisher, I had the idea that I was just going to hand the manuscript over and, right, you're going to do the rest.
Right.
Do the rest. Okay, see you later.
That's traditional publishing.
That's traditional
and you
publishing.
only get paid $1 for that at the end of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very small amount. So I didn't actually realise I was self-publishing until Jackie said, hey, you're self-publishing. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough.
That gives you more
This
control.
is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so the process was a lot easier. I was very confused and needed a little bit of support. And I think Jackie really helped me with telling me the process of book printing, and in-house let me know along the way what they were doing and what's next. And for a first-time author, I felt like I really needed support. Even self-publishing through an organization like in-house made it easier for me to just have that support and have my questions answered. Because there's quite a lot to it. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that the author doesn't really see if they go through a publisher, self or traditional.
There's a lot of work that goes into the book, into writing, and I've said it to all the people I've podcasted with that 2% of writers end up published.
Wow.
Yeah, 2%.
2%.
So high five to you.
High five to that. Ultimately, writing is also about the act of writing. So we go back to that endgaining thing that Alexander was talking about. I mean, when I was writing the journal, I thought a book would be nice, but ultimately I was writing it for the writing, for the therapy, the boons and the positivity that I received out of those journal entries just was huge. And then putting into a book again. When I was in the studio with Simone reading it, even the process of reading this audiobook, reading from the chapters, was helping me to be present to read the chapters. So it just continues. And everything that I've been writing, I feel, is just a continual teaching for myself.
Well, congratulations. You've done outstanding. Like I said, to get this far, 2% make it, to write it, to have the spiritual growth that you have. You've come a long way personally, and now you've found the home within. And I think I've also had a little look at my home within just quietly after being on the road with you for the last 5 days. So thank you. So where can people find out about you, David?
So the book is available on thehomewithinbook.com.au. It's also going to be on Amazon, also on Audible and iTunes.
Yeah. You're on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook. I don't have an author's page.
But you've got your audiobook producer and your publishers and Jackie saying you should get one?
Yes, probably. and I've been kind of thinking about it and resisting a little bit, and I'm still undecided. But ultimately, the homewithinbook.com.au is the primary method you can buy the book. You can send me an email. I totally recommend sending me an email, having a personal conversation. These things are what I intended with the journal entries, was to keep that social contact open, even though I was in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Old-fashioned writing. Old-fashioned writing.
Like in person, you mean? Not like a text message, everybody, like a real letter.
No abbreviated words.
The Home Within, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful story, and you get a good insight about Australia and the growth that one David Bayley has had. And you'll get some tips as well how to grow too. Thank you for doing that with me.
And thank you for having me, Simone.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And my guests from around the world.
Thank you for being a part of this show.
The Simone Feiler Podcast. Catch you next time.
It's a wrap.